Ava Anderson, an adopted woman raised by distant relatives in a wealthy family, is publicly humiliated by her adoptive sister Emma during their grandmother's will-reading dinner. Emma forces Ava to pay a lavish bill and belittles her adoption status. As Ava leaves, the longtime family lawyer reveals a sealed trust established by grandmother Margaret that protects adopted family members and gives Ava control of a $50 million education trust, foundation power, and majority shares, activating when discrimination is witnessed. Emma's public cruelty triggers forfeiture of her inheritance and exposes embezzlement from the trust. Ava becomes trustee, demands restitution and accountability, offers conditional mercy tied to reparative actions, and reveals her birth parents' heroic history. The story ends with transformation. Emma repents publicly, a scholarship fund is launched, and Ava embraces her chosen identity. The marble air of Leonard Dan smelled of citrus zest and expensive oak. The chandelier refracted the room into jeweled slices. Ava's heels clicked a steady, small cadence against a floor polished by generations of care. She kept her hands in her coat pockets to hide the receipt waiting there, $3,270, an obscene number that seemed to have its own gravity. This night was supposed to be a formality. Funerals, lawyers, the polite ritual of naming who inherits what when a life has folded. Instead, the private dining room felt like an audience chamber where verdicts were handed down as amuse-bouches. Family faces were propped like portraits, all angles and practiced sympathy. Emma ruled the center, a queen in navy, hands carved with manicured confidence. Her laugh fit the room's expensive echo. From the corner, Ava watched the choreography, champagne, anecdote, the smooth trading of legacies. Her voice, when offered, was swallowed by the air between courses. She had learned to be small in big rooms. The heavy table lamps taught her how to disappear beneath glare. Grandmother Margaret had once given her the opposite lesson, quiet lessons about ledgers and trustees, a hand that steadied her when she was 8 and everything else had been taken. Those afternoons in that sunlit study were memory soft as dust, inked envelopes, brittle paper, a careful woman teaching a child how to hold power like a fragile vase. Emma interrupted the memory with a toast that had teeth. "Family matters," she said, and the room leaned forward because it always does when someone offers a truth that flatters them. Then, as if on cue, she performed the cruelest punctuation. She motioned toward an empty two-top by the service door and announced, as if reading a menu, that table was for real family. Faces smiled in the way people do when cruelty is explained as taste. The waiter appeared with a leather folder. It felt like an accusation in hand. Emma pointed to Ava's chair. The gesture had a finality to it, an order, not a suggestion. The room hummed. Ava took the folder, eyes steady as a teacher whose students never listen. The number at the bottom flashed like an insult. She slid her card, signed where her name belonged, and felt the signature anchor itself into a new kind of ledger, one written in shame. She rose to leave under a rain of polite laughter that sounded like applause for a bad play. Her coat closed around her like a shield. The door opened to Boston's cool night, as if to take her away from the small universe where she had been refashioned into the charity case. The valet ticket crinkled in her palm. Her heart beat with the rhythm of steps that had taken her from foster homes to silverware and back. She almost made it to the car. The lawyer's voice stopped her, not a plea or a performance, but a precise instrument. "Miss Anderson," he said, and all the years of watching him move through family rooms clicked into place. He held a sealed folder with a court stamp that gleamed under the chandelier's reflection. There was something about his eyes, old habit meeting new resolve, so she turned. The private room swallowed the noise of coats and breath and left them with a different sound, a document being set upon a podium, a man clearing his throat as if to read history aloud. In that pause, every small humiliation seemed to bend toward one question: who, in that room, had been keeping records long enough to set the scales right? The leather creak of the podium told a different story than the clink of cutlery had. James Morrison had been the family lawyer long enough to know the cadence of secrets. Tonight he used that cadence like a metronome. He opened the folder slowly, like unwrapping a relic, and the room leaned forward because that is what privileged people do when they are offered surprise. Ava's mind catalogued snapshots: the kitchen tray she was handed as a child, the narrow bed tucked behind servants' quarters, Emma's smile that used kindness as a scalpel. The house itself was a ledger, a winged facade of generational wealth stitched together by names and silence. Ava had become fluent in its silences.